Well, this does come alive. Who's got council? She's got a declaration of interest. She'll have to leave the chamber. When she leaves the chamber, get all. And then we'll get one of the staff to open the door up.
Okay, welcome, councillors. May the Lord give this council the wisdom, discernment and courage to serve the community. Grant also that we may act compassionately and with integrity in the best interest of this shire. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I would like to show respect to and acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land and elders past, present and future on which this meeting takes place. This meeting is being recorded and those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements. There to be no other recording of this meeting without prior authorization of council. Thank you. Councillors, just remember if you're going to speak, please put your microphones on. Okay, we move on to number 3, apologies.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we have apologies from Councillor Fisher and Councillor Burns.
Got a mover? Move Councillor Campbell, second Councillor Driscoll. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Public participation.
Through you, Mr Acting Mayor, there's one public participation. That's from Councillor Lee Watts. It's in regards to the item on the agenda, which is Emerald Park Playground.
So to start, I'll give a bit of background. The Scone Neighbourhood Resource Centre applied for a grant to build a spray and play park at Amaroo Park, Scone. The communities across the Hunter voted and we were one of the 3 projects that received the most votes and were awarded the grant. The funding covered the water park, but council thought it safer and the SNRC agreed to have a chlorination system, but at a cost of $120,000, funding did not cover this. With COVID-19 and in discussion with senior staff, we look for a way forward to benefit the community. The park equipment at Amaroo is overdue for replacement, and so we should move forward with a concept plan to install a new park with ability access and swings in 2 stages. To use the neighbourhood centre, $116,000, and council park equipment budget of $60,000. The park will meet council's DAP policy adopted by council 4 years ago. The Neighbourhood Resource Centre required council and the community's support to change the program from a water park to a park with ability equipment, and in stage 2 a musical addition and additional ability equipment to add to the first stage. Council would be required to meet that cost and any other contingency costs that may arise in the project. Council will also be responsible for ongoing maintenance of the park as they are with any park on their land across the Shire. If the Neighbourhood Centre go ahead with the park, council will still need to replace the park equipment as it is out of date. So that is if the Neighbourhood Centre does not go ahead with the park, council will still need to replace this park equipment as it is already out of date. This would mean an outlay to purchase the park equipment, which will exceed $60,000, the $9,000 management fee, and still be responsible for ongoing maintenance costs. I am presently applying for a second grant for a musical playground that will be in addition to stage 1 at Amaroo. Stage 2 consists of outdoor musical equipment, the ramp to the All Ability Flying Fox, and pommel for all abilities. Shade sails that will cover both stage 1 and 2. The shade sail will save council $35,000. If successful with this grant, The funds will completely cover the second stage. No cost to council except the 60,000, which is already budgeted to replace the council playground equipment. This is an excellent project that will bring joy to many children and to make Amaroo Park an outstanding asset to the Upper Hunter Shire Council. A park with all ability swings will encourage parents to stop in Scone, as parents with a child with a disability often need to plan their journeys ahead. The Upper Hunter Shire Council has adopted a Disability Inclusion Action Plan, and our commitment is to improve inclusion and access in our community. This park is a small step in supporting that plan. People with disabilities and their carers have the same rights as everyone to choose how they live, work and play in the communities across the Upper Hunter Shire. To return a $120,000 grant to the funding body instead of replacing a park with improved equipment, to me does not add up. Not only will the community miss out on a park, but a percentage of that grant supports the neighbourhood centre for its work on the project. If that money has to go back, that will have to be returned also. I look forward to your support on this project.
Thank you, Lee. Any questions from councillors? Yes,
If I
Councillor
may,
Campbell.
thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Lee. You presented that very well. There is has been discussed regarding the parking, etc. Those streets are very narrow, and I guess this is perhaps not a question for you, but rather to Nick. There is a ratio of street parking for particular developments. Now, you may not be able to answer that, and I'll get Nick to answer that later on. It seems really the concept, however, the cost, etc., is twice the amount of what council has budgeted. Don't you think that the $121,000 would be able to put in very good facilities there without having to take the actual money from and the continuing costs of maintenance, etc.? Don't you think that's a little unreasonable to expect that?
No, I don't. It's a community park. It's for our community. It's for our children. It's for the people that go to the park. The 60,000 is budgeted. Whether I put this park in or not, council will have to use that 60,000 to replace that park. It won't be able to be used at another park. It's already budgeted into the plan for the future. That's correct, I think? Yeah? Yeah? And in relation to the parking, Nick and I have had a look at that. We understand that there will need parking. It will be a popular park because of what's going in there. There is access on the front area to add parking, but we haven't. I mean, we've only looked at it. That's all we've got at this stage.
Any more questions, Councillor Abbott?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to clarify, we have to spend the $60,000 anyway, don't we, from council? That's correct, isn't it?
That's correct. It is the replacement of park equipment. That park has to be replaced because its use-by date's over.
And if we don't approve it tonight, that money will have to go back to the funding body, if that's correct?
The money is still for the Splash and Play Park, but we have not got the additional money for the chlorination system that will go in place. So yes, it will have to go back to the funding body.
Yes, and obviously it's a very important park. Yeah, I mean, you did a great presentation. It's I can see it's very vital. And yes, thank you. And in relation to parking, right now we don't need parking. Parking would be, what is there is adequate, isn't it, for the time being?
I believe so. I've been up there quite a lot because we actually put the bike park in there originally. And look, people do use it. They do use it for, their parties and things like that. But a lot of those people live around the area already, so they're walking. They're not actually bringing a car up. There will be additional cars, but there's not going to be a traffic jam up there at the moment, no.
Thank you.
Councillor Campbell?
Just a clarification, perhaps maybe the general manager needs to do this, is the funds that have been allocated, that is for the Shire. It's not allocated for a specific the $60,000 that it has to go to the Amaroo Park. Is that correct? Could you clarify that, please?
Just in regards, and I might get I'll defer this question to Mr. Javier to answer.
Thank you. So council has $60,000 budget for playground replacement across the Shire each year, and then we select the replacement of the playgrounds based on their condition and their age.
Mr. Mayor, yes, I went up there yesterday and
Mr. Acting Mayor, can I just raise a point of order, please?
Yes,
Sorry, this is just me being a pedant, but we are in public participation rather than debate on this issue. And these questions that Councillor Campbell has might be better asked during the formal discussion.
I accept that, Mr. Mayor.
take it on board. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Okay, councillors, on to point 6, disclosure of interest.
There's one disclosure of interest. That's from Councillor Watts in relation to Emery Park Playground. It's a pecuniary significant. She's the manager of the Emery Park Playground project, and that's in regards to seeking the funding for that. And she will not participate or vote on the matter, and she will leave the room when the matter's considered.
Thank you, Mr. GM. No Merrill minutes, no reports. Just before we do move on, councillors, onto the infrastructure reports, I'd just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Wayne Bedgood, resigning from his position as mayor and councillor on Upper Shire Council. I'd just like to acknowledge that his hard work over the nearly 8 years of working on behalf of his community and our leader for 5 years. And I'm sure when we have a full gallery of councillors, maybe in our next meeting, we will bring this up again and councillors can all speak if they wish. But just to note our appreciation to Wayne Bedgood. Thank you. Okay, councillors, let's move on to page 1.06.1, Emery Park Playground.
Moved. Oh, sorry. So I've moved it.
Okay, councillors, the recommendation, I won't read it out. The recommendation's there in front of you and it has been moved by Councillor Abbott.
I'm happy to second it, Mr. Acting Mayor.
The motion has been moved. It's by Councillor Abbott, seconded by Councillor Brown. Councillor Abbott, you'd like to speak?
Yes, I would. That was an excellent presentation from Councillor Watts, and I think this is an excellent proposal. It's very important that we fulfil our requirements and our commitment to the Disability Inclusion Plan, and I've had the honour to be part of that subcommittee for a couple of meetings, and it's very apparent from the parents who come to that how important an all-ability playground is. And I know that from one of the meetings, one of the mothers actually mentioned a point that Councillor Watts mentioned in her presentation as from the Scone Neighbourhood Resource Centre, was that when they were taking journeys with their child, they looked ahead to see around the country where there were towns that had playgrounds that would suit their child. And so not only is that marvellous for the family, but it's also good for a town that has such infrastructure, such vital infrastructure, because the family ends up spending more money and getting to see our lovely town and our lovely shire. It's really important that we have an inclusive programme for all abilities. We've heard from both Mrs. Watts in her capacity from the Neighbourhood Resource Centre and from Mr. Javier that the Amaroo Park is at the end of its life. So it's time to replace it. And it's been selected by council to be the park to be upgraded. And from what I've seen here, and the fact that both Mrs. Watts and Mr. Javier have both been open and very collaborative with what needs to be done, so that there has been a change in proposal, which clearly will go out to the community to have a look at. I think it's an excellent programme. And as a grandmother now, having been to some of these parks, these all-ability parks, I just cannot see why we wouldn't actually go ahead with this. I think it's marvellous. We have the money, the funding has come. If we don't approve this and that funding has to go back, that will just be so shameful. I know I absolutely commend this project, and I commend Mr. Haviott and Mrs. Watts for working so hard, and all of council for working so hard to get this first one, which perhaps potentially is a pilot for across the Shire, for all our playgrounds when they all come to the end of their lives, that we will finally do something like this. I think it's marvellous. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Campbell.
Mr. Acting Mayor, I'll foreshadow a motion.
Or shadow a motion. Councillor Campbell, what we might do is then is put the original recommendation up. Oh, Councillor, I forgot about Councillor Brown in the background.
Councillor Brown, then you got Councillor Bismarck.
I didn't forget about you.
Okay, Councillor Brown, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Look, I'm happy to second and support this motion. I actually think it's a no-brainer. We have we've allocated $60,000 to this park as part of our Depop. The equipment has to be upgraded, and for nothing we can get a $180,000 park that is going to address a great level of need in families with kids and with disabilities. It's a beautiful idea. This is the kind of thing that government really should look to embrace. We've got the buying power of our $60,000 and the neighbourhood centre's $120,000 is that the sum of their parts is much greater than if we were to do these things separately. The risk of losing $120,000 from a community facility would be a scandal, and I just think it's a no-brainer. I think that we should very enthusiastically agree to this and get on with the job, and the result won't be regretted. This will be something that we'll be able to look back on with some pride, and I think, as Councillor Abbott pointed out, should in fact sort of be a pilot and set the standard of facility that we should roll out into all of the towns and villages in our Shire. So I would find it, I couldn't possibly not support getting $120,000 worth of money for nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Now, we have got a shadowed motion from Councillor Campbell, but Councillor Campbell, have you got a seconder for that shadowed motion?
Do we have a second?
Do you want to speak against or for the?
Look, yes, I'd like to clarify something and to also speak against that original motion. I think it's rather the amount of money we're talking about is a large amount of money. We've got areas out in the I'm not saying send the $181,000 back, $120,000 back. Let's be clear on that. But I think for us, for the council, we've got areas out in the outlying areas that have got absolutely substandard facilities for their children. And I'm reminded of Cassellis, and there's a submission that has gone on, which I have read, and I would like to see other councillors read it. Nobody really plays there because, in fact, they are so substandard. They were put in against the wishes of that community, and it's really only just a little thing. No children want to go and play there. And those are things that I think that we should just consider in how we are allocating our money. And so therefore that's why I foreshadowed a motion. But I think also that with the current feeling within the community that large sums of money are being concentrated in one area, I think is rather obscene to go and tell them that they can't have money for their playground in the outlying areas. So I just believe, yes, the concept, but I just believe that we should be not spending all that amount of money in having then to pay for the upkeep, pay for the administration and all those things. I think that's just quite wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Abbott, you have the right to reply.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I would just like to mention I've read all the submissions for the Depop. I think this, as I mentioned, and Councillor Brown has supported me in, that this would be a pilot. So we'll be able to look at Castlers, which is sorely in need of a new playground. We'll be able to look to Aberdeen as well and look at everybody's playgrounds. If we send this money back, if we change what's on the table after all the hard work between council and the Scone Neighbourhood Resource Centre, this will be shameful. This is a very important project. It's one I so get behind, and it's sorely in need, and it sets a standard and it sets an example, and we can go from there. So we can go to Castlers, we can go to Aberdeen, we can go to Merriwall, we can go to where these parks need to be available to all abilities. I just hope we all support, well, we're not all going to support it, but I hope the rest of us do, because it's a marvellous thing. And we can look at Aberdeen, and we can, you know, look at Murrurundi as well. We can do this. And there's been a lot of work done. As Councillor Brown has said, it's essentially right now 180,000 on a playground. It's a playground that's come to the end of its life. It's a playground that council has identified as being a very good match for something that Mrs. Watts has put forward, and there has obviously got the most votes, which is extraordinary. We must do this. It's so important. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Just before I put that original motion up, just a question to Mr. Haviott from myself. The original splash park is off the table. What's the noise? Like this park looks very, very modern, and no doubt is going to get used very, very severely. What's the noise like for children? I mean, we could have 50, 60, 70 children in that park at once, because it's going to be a beautiful park. What's the community feedback?
Sorry, just get a clarification. So you're asking the question about how much noise this potentially will raise. This proposal is at a neighbourhood park, and it will generate a lot more traffic than a normal neighbourhood park, because it's a lot larger playground we're proposing. So at the moment we've got our standard size playground. Expanding it will increase the amount of traffic, which will increase the amount of noise. How much more noise, I'm not sure. But obviously the more people use it, the more noise there is. But that's part of the consultation process that we can get clarified with the community consultation that we're proposing.
Mr. Acting Mayor, could I make a comment on that?
One more.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just in relation to the noise and the park, I've taken my granddaughter to a park like this, and they're marvellous. They're absolutely wonderful. And the drums, because I think that perhaps could raise concern, they are not like normal drums. They are playground drums. So they're essentially a heavy duty sort of plastic that has an incredibly mellow sound. It's really lovely. And it's essentially, this is a neighbourhood park. So you do want to see children playing in parks. I mean, that's a marvellous thing when that happens. A lot of our towns live near schools, and when I have been near a school, when I've been visiting my friends who have back gardens who back onto Scone Primary, that is just one of the loveliest sounds you can hear, is when the children are out in there having their break and they're playing and they're laughing and they're carrying on like children. It's marvellous. So this would obviously not be as noisy as a school, because it's a small neighbourhood park. I can't see why we wouldn't want to have children play outside, you know, come with their parents and their grandparents and their carers, whoever it is. I cannot understand that there is actually any opposition to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Everyone's right now. Okay, councillors, the recommendation is in front of us. I think I'm going to put that recommendation up, and So we've got moved by councillor Abbott, second by councillor Brown. Any more questions, comment, discussion? I think we've discussed it and commented enough. Everyone agree? Hands up those in favour of the original recommendation. Councillor Abbott and councillor Brown. Hands up those against. 3. That motion has been lost 3-2. Councillor Campbell, you had a foreshadowed motion. And have you got a seconder? You've got to read your motion, your foreshadowed motion, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. The recommendation that I'm putting forward in the motion is that Council 1 endorse the concept design of Amaroo Park Playground. 2, seek community consultation from the whole Shire for the proposed playground. 3, receive a further report from the community consultation of the proposed playground. 4, fund the gap of stage 1 of the project up to including $15,000 up to $15,000. 5, discuss the change of scope of the My Community grant with Scone Neighbourhood Resource Centre and the funding body. 6, support the application for a grant for the stage 2 works at Amaroo Park Playground, subject to the Scone Neighbourhood Resource Centre funding the project management costs of stages 1 and 2.
Thank you, councillor Campbell. Second, councillor Driscoll. Any questions, comment, discussion in that? Councillor Abbott. Oh, you got the right to speak, sorry. I don't.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy Mayor. Look, this is a part of a clarification. We are not saying send the money back at all. I just feel very strongly about the fact that all of this money is being spent in a central area. And I know that the feeling that is running very strong in certain areas, especially in the outlying areas. And I believe that this will have to be decided upon at a council meeting, that the remaining funds out of the $60,000 would have to go through the infrastructure meeting and then be recommended to council. I think also that this proposal out there, it takes away a lot of, let me put that again, it's relying on people taking their children to that centre from all over maybe the Shire, but it won't be the Shire, but mainly Scone. So then we're suggesting that there is not a parking problem. I suggest that that is not correct and hasn't been thought through. Because if it's only going to be for the local ones that live around in that particular radius, it's a lot of money to spend for that area. What about those that are out at SATA and out in the northern sections? Are they going to be able to walk across and go to that, young children go across to that park? I think not. There's a safety issue involved. So to suggest that other people are going to come to an area like that, if they're going to come as their travellers, they'll be bringing a caravan. What are they going to do? Park it somewhere in somebody's street? I think that some of these things need to be thought through. I'm very happy to support, as this motion suggests, that the money be used and redirected to the playground equipment, but I don't agree that we should be supporting such another support of a huge amount, which would total about $300,000, and then spend that in one little park. I think that is quite obscene in my view.
Thank you, councillor Campbell. So you spoke for it. We got someone to speak against that foreshadowed.
Yes, I am so disappointed that we've lost the motion for all abilities for a playground that would include disabled children. I cannot believe that this council has actually voted it down. There will be complications now amending the motion with the funding. This could have been a pilot. We could have actually done something really, really good for the community. This is vital infrastructure. It is just as vital as a road. This is for children whose abilities we need to meet them. We have a disability inclusion plan. That is something we're supposed to do. As Councillor Brown mentioned, this is a project that governments actually are, get right behind. This grant has been approved. We got $120,000 because the government sees and recognises the importance of it. That we have voted this down as the Upper Hunter Shire Council is disgraceful. I am so disappointed. I wonder what the point of me being a councillor is when we lose something like that. And I will consider what I am going to do next.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Driscoll, you as a seconder.
Well, I'm agreeable to do the first stage, but probably not the second stage at this stage. Because it'll be too much money for one park. But I am agreeable with the 120 and the 60.
Sorry, I'm confused. What is happening? So did Councillor Driscoll approve the first motion? What was that about then? Could somebody explain that, please?
I just don't quite understand. Councillor Driscoll went against the first recommendation.
So what did Councillor Driscoll, sorry,
Well,
what did
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Driscoll just
Mr.
say?
Deputy Mayor, we should be
order.
we're going through the Deputy Mayor, not showing proper respect for the state, for the Mayor's position.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I'll just add something there quickly. The two recommendations to me are not that much different, if I'm correct, Mr. Havitt, apart for the council will put the 15,000 in instead of the original 60. Am I correct there?
Yep. Through the mayor. So my interpretation of what the difference between the two is that the stage one has been reduced. You're saying council put in $15,000 on top of the 120, which gets $130,000 playground instead of $180,000. So my job will be to look at what we can modify to reduce that size, still addressing inclusion, still addressing all age. You'll still support keeping those requirements in there, is my interpretation. And then the item 6, if you just refresh my memory on that one. Sorry, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. I'm glad to do that. Yes. That's very clear. We are not stopping the $121,000.
Yep.
120. No, and those things can be included.
Yep.
Point 6, support the application for a grant of the stage 2 works at Amaroo Park Playground, subject to the Scone Neighbourhood Resource Centre funding the project management costs and stages 1 and 2. I just think that if I may speak, I've answered that question. Is that I will speak again.
Can I just respond? Finish my
Yes.
response. So my interpretation of that there is that Councillor Watts and myself will sit down tomorrow morning and work out what the scope of works, revised scope of works will be for stage 2, that we'll be able to put that application in. But the whole way along, both of those motions are talking about an all-inclusive playground and putting a playground at Amaroo Park.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Deputy Mayor, just clarifying, so stage 1 would look like a $135,000 park, and stage 2, as identified in the report, would be $92,000. If what was identified in the report was applied for by the Scone Resource Neighbourhood Centre. So you'd have $135,000 plus $92,000 on top of that, just clarifying that.
Okay, Councillor, I think that's enough debate on that.
Mr. Acting Mayor, could I just make a couple of brief observations?
Yes, Councillor Brown.
No, that's all right. Name's right and I am here. I just make a couple of points. One, we go on about, this being terribly expensive. You don't get much park for this kind of money. Nothing is cheap. anymore, and particularly in the provision of, you know, equipment that meets the safety standards that we must adhere to. The second point is that this just will look like council is trying to offset its own obligations. It has an obligation to upgrade the equipment that's already there. We've allocated $60,000 in our Depop, and we've now said, "Woo, $120,000 of somebody else's money come along." Therefore, we can squirrel away $45,000 of it. I don't think it's a good look, and frankly, wouldn't be surprised if the neighbourhood centre says, "Right, we're withdrawing our offer," and then we wind up having to reallocate the $45,000 and wind up with a second-rate park. So I'm disappointed that the decision was made, but I'm not going to oppose Councillor Campbell's foreshadowed motion, because $15,000 is better than nothing. But it's a bit disappointing.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I think there's enough discussion.
I would like to ask if somebody could explain to me what Councillor Driscoll said. I didn't understand what she said.
I think that's irrelevant anyway. I mean, they got the mover and the seconder. The seconder doesn't have to speak. So I'm going to now put the foreshadowed motion up. Would someone like to read it out? Are we all clear what it says? Or Councillor Campbell, would you like to read, or the General Manager read, please? Or Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm happy to read it. Although
Just the motion, please.
Just the motion. That Council, 1, endorse the concept design of the Amaroo Park Playground. 2, seek community consultation from the whole Shire for the proposed playground. 3, receive a further report on the community consultation of the proposed playground. 4, fund the gap of stage 1 of the project up to $15,000. 5, discuss the change of scope of the My Community grant with Scone Neighbourhood Resource Centre and the funding body. 6, support the application for a grant for the stage 2 works at Amaroo Park Playground, subject to the Scone Neighbourhood Resource Centre funding the project management costs of stages 1 and 2.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I think we've had enough question, comment, discussion. So I'm going to put that foreshadowed motion up. Those in favour? And Councillor Brown? That's 4, and against? Councillor Abbott. So that foreshadowed motion has been passed. Councillor, can someone bring Councillor Watts back in, please? Councillor Watts, the original recommendation was lost, and there was a foreshadowed motion, which I will now get the General Manager. You don't need to have it read again?
No, I don't need it read again. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, there's no further business. We'll declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.